Hey, it's Kelly with Rogue MFA, and if you are thinking about asking for feedback on your writing and the thought of that kind of is making you shit your pants, I totally understand. Or if you have asked for feedback in the past and it hasn't gone well, and you're like, fuck, I don't want to do that again, but you know that it could be really helpful, I've got you. Let's talk about some ways that you can ask for feedback on your writing to get what you actually want, to weed out the pricks in your group, and to move on with your story. Back in my ivory tower days, when I was teaching creative writing, every week we had a workshop component where a handful of students had their work presented and we all gave them feedback. And one of the things that I always had them do was to create a document that let the rest of us know what exactly they were looking for. And that document ended up being one of the best things to kind of quell their anxiety, to help guide everybody else in the room as to what to kind of do. Most of them were new to giving feedback and new to workshop. And I wanted to make that really accessible. I wanted to make it not, a freaky experience, because having somebody read your work is so personal and freaky, right? And we're going to go through it one by one. So the first thing that we want to do is tell our group what I want you to focus on. It helps them to understand what we perceive as the writer to be the problem. I've been banging my head against the wall trying to work out this plot point. That also helps take the reader off the hook. They know that you're looking for, does this work? Am I getting it right this time? And as a reader, we have this really bad habit of looking at the work and saying, well, this is what I want it to be, right? So it kind of keeps us from dropping into that territory, and it helps us to give much better feedback. This is also a place to indicate to the reader where you are in the process. Like, this is just my first draft. I'm trying to see if this idea has teeth. This is a revision, and I'm not sure if it's better than maybe earlier drafts that you've seen, or if I'm really hitting the mark in some way. I've got a couple of things figured out here, but these things I don't. And it also helps you as the reader not get into granular microscopic detail into things that the writer already knows that they're going to change. So we're not wasting our time, and we can put it to much better use. The second thing that we want to talk about is, here are the things that I already know aren't working. So the reason we want to let our writing group know the things that we already know aren't working is so that they're not fixating on shit that doesn't matter. I have been in a bunch of writing groups where people have taken off on a tangent about something that they think really needs to be fixed. And it's not even the draft that I'm on. And so the entire feedback session was a massive waste of everyone's time as they're arguing about shit that I don't really care about, or I'm not even at a point where I can even address that. So you can say things in this section. It could be a sentence, it could be a couple sentences, a paragraph, right? Where you can say, look, I have written this in first person, I flipped it into third, or vice versa. I know that I haven't caught all the verb conjugations. I know that I haven't caught every instance of that. And I know that some of these sentences are going to be a little clunky because of that, but I just kind of am looking for, again, in that here's what I'd like your help on. They all kind of feed each other. Is that working? And it tells me as a reader that I don't need to flag all of your typos. I'm going to assume that the vast majority of this is going to be rewritten. So I can start to look at then the broader narrative, the larger story here, and the things that you wanted me to look at. So this takes us to part 3, my list of questions. Sometimes you're just looking for general feedback. You just want to know, are the vibes vibing? And you can simply just put that in there. All I'm looking for is your impression of the work, and that's all I'm going to need to carry forward. But sometimes you're working on something really specific, and this is a great place to put this, where you're saying, I tried to do X thing for the plot, to differentiate characters, to cause a scene. Like, was it enough? Was it believable? Did you have questions around this particular thing? Because what that does for me as the reader is it lets me know that you're open to a lot of interpretation, and you're open to having a big conversation about that particular part of your story, which then helps me to say, yes, it totally worked, or no, and I wonder if you might do XYZ. This is also a really great section if you write historical fiction like I do, because sometimes I find the historical event to be so freaking interesting that I'm trying really hard to wedge that stuff into the story, right? I'm like, ooh. And a lot of times it really just puts sand in the gears, much to my chagrin. I'm like, but this was so cool, right? So this is a place where you can ask those kinds of questions. Like, do you even care? Like, this is the thing that I find really fascinating about history. It pertains to this story. Do we need it or do we not? Am I bogging up the whole system? right? So again, you don't have to have anything, but this is a really great place for you to ask very targeted questions before we even sit down and talk about what's going on in your piece. And that leads us into number 4, which is the final section of this document. And I would argue probably the most important. This is how I want to receive your feedback. Now, you might not have anything in the 3 sections above. You might just say, no questions. This is the first draft. Like, I just give me your general feedback, right? I'm not working on anything in particular, but this last section, do not sleep on, because this is the part where we feel the most attacked. This is the part where it turns us off from like workshopping stuff and being in writing community. It is also the place where we are going to see who's the asshole and who's going to cross our boundary and who isn't. All right. And that's going to really help you going forward. Like, do I want to be in this group? Do I not want to be in this group? How do I want to approach that? And understanding that it's not you and it's not your work, that sometimes people are dicks. And this one is going to weed them out for you. So when I say to my students, tell me how you want to receive feedback, I would give them a bunch of examples. And students, everybody's on a different place in this spectrum. I had students who would say things like, tell me the whole thing, just like beat it up, give me the truth, like rip it to shreds. They were so eager and so sweet, right? I would never rip it to shreds because that's really kind of mean. But it also helped me as a reader to understand that they were very interested in just making the work the best it could be. They had already removed themselves from identifying with that work. The work was not an extension of them. So that's really helpful for me to know, like as their prof, but as a reader going in, that I could be more direct in the feedback that I gave them. We always want to be kind, but that helped me to be more direct. But I also had students who were on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and this is also totally okay. And they would say things like, I only want to hear the positives when we're meeting, and I want to sit with written feedback and the critiques of the work, because that helps me to be able to just kind of sit through it, look at what it is you've written. I process it much better that way. That's amazing, right? I think that that's brilliant. So that way you still get the benefit of understanding what I'm questioning without having to feel like you're against the firing squad, or whatever that looks like. So any of those places in between, it is well within your right. And I say, absolutely tell your teammates and your group how you want to receive that feedback so that they know. So when you do meet and you do that, you can kind of review that and go, okay, this person needs this particular thing from me. And because you are a good member of your group and because you want to do right by your community, you're going to follow that. And the people who don't, and the people who are there for themselves and are kind of bullies about it, then you'll know who not to invite back. So I'm hoping that that helps you. I hope it kind of takes some of the stress away from asking for feedback on your work, because it is one of the most transformative things that can happen to your writing, is to get other eyes on it, particularly in earlier phases of development. Give it a whirl. It's a document. It's 4 pieces. Your writing group will thank you, and you're going to get way better feedback. I'll see you in the next one.